Well, welcome to University Convocation. We know that we're in the midst of a global pandemic, so Convocation's not working like it normally does, but we're so glad that you've tuned in for the University of Pikeville's weekly Convocation chat. Today we have one of the new member to our UPIKE family with us today. Would you introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Darwin Kysor, and I am the new Director of Career and Professional Development.
That's a great title. Where'd you come from?
So I am moving to Pikeville from central Pennsylvania. I spent a majority of my life in Pennsylvania, but I've lived around the country, including Wisconsin, Oregon, Georgia, Maryland. But for the past 23 years, I've been in central Pennsylvania at Juniata College, working as the Director of Career Development there.
So you have a ton of experience doing what you're doing, and you're also a PhD.
Mm-hmm.
What did you do your PhD in?
So my PhD is it's in College Student Services Administration, which is sort of a very focused higher education administration degree. Prior to that, I have a master's degree in counselor education, and I chose those degrees for a couple reasons. But the PhD I specifically chose more administratively based because I didn't really consider myself a counselor. And so I didn't want to get a PhD in counseling. I wanted to balance that with more of an administrative degree, and I knew I wanted to work in higher ed, so it seemed like a good match to put the counselor education with the College Student Services Administration. And that's from Oregon State University.
So you bring a lot of these skills, a lifetime of knowledge, plus skills where people can talk to you, students can relate with you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you even have children who are college age, right? So you did that in a very great way. So if I were a student coming into your office, right, and I just need some help, what are some things your office could do for a student?
Mm-hmm. So I really see the career development office as having three main services. So first, one of our goals is to work with students in selecting their major and their career direction. So some students come to college and know exactly what they want to do, and they go through college and they do that. Other students come in and they think they know what they want to do, but they change their mind. Other students enter college and really don't know what they want to do. So we want to work with students in selecting their major and their career direction. I'm actually kind of beefing up that area of our service. Recently we subscribed to a program called Focus 2, which is a 5-part career assessment. That'll be available on our website really for anybody to access, hopefully sometime in May. Okay. The second service of our office is we really want to work with students doing what we call high impact practices. So things like internships, could be volunteering, certainly student employment on campus is a great possibility for that. But those experientially based things that can help someone enhance their skills so that when they're graduating they're going to be really marketable. And then our third service is really working with upper class students in implementing their plan beyond the University of Pikeville. So whether that's full-time employment or going to graduate or professional school, whatever that individual student's plan is. So those are really our three main services as I see it.
So really from day one, I could be involved with your office. I mean, it's not just for seniors who are wanting to figure out what their career needs to be. I mean, since day one, you can really help me get immersed, get involved, explore, find out. Well, that's fantastic. You know, I know so often our students think about work study alone. That's kind of like, okay, I got to get this job to pay off my college bill. But what you're really saying, it's a lot bigger than just work study.
Right. Yeah, you can develop skills in those campus positions or off-campus, student positions. There's a lot of skills that you can develop. I think you often need to be purposeful about that, and that goes for both students and work supervisors. If they're purposeful about it, there can definitely be skill enhancement in any type of position. Right? Sometimes you learn skills that you don't want to use, but other times you learn skills that can be really marketable down the road. And often students will be exposed to some type of experience in their part-time job, whether it's on or off campus, and that'll impact their career direction. They might think, oh, I really like this. I could see myself doing this. So, and it may be something they've never considered before.
Yeah, I hear that a lot from people, the kind of one-off or small experience that they have, and they think, well, this is just, I'm just checking a box, and all of a sudden, that's a thing that kind of shifts the whole direction of their life, and off they go. You know, what you're saying is, I think, really exciting. I think a lot of our students would love to have help, but here we are in the midst of a global pandemic. How in the world would a student connect with you right now?
Okay, so we're actually, I'm hoping within the next week to do outreach, actually to probably every single, at least undergraduate student here at the University of Pikeville. I'm going to send individual emails letting them know some of the things they might want to consider doing during the pandemic, because there are things you can do. I know, I'm working from campus, I'm going to be working from home, a little bit of each, and I have some time to fill in. I'm actually kind of a little tired of watching television and doing some of that stuff. You can only do so much of that. And so some of the things I'm recommending students do, develop or update your resume, right? You can easily do that, and we're here to help you do that. So if you get some information together for a resume, you can email it to us. We can critique it and send it back to you. It can go back and forth multiple times. You don't have to be on campus to do that, right? Practice interviewing. Look at some sample questions. Decide how you might answer those questions in an interview, right? Not that you want to have a canned response, but you don't want to be surprised in an interview by a question either, right? And there are some online things as well where you can do, sort of video practice interviewing, and we're more than willing to do that too. I mean, we have access to Zoom. It's very easy. We can do a video practice interviewing, which is really timely at this point because most employers aren't interviewing people in person right now. They're doing it via the phone or some online service, okay? It's a good time to create or update your LinkedIn profile. There's a ton of stuff out there. I have some pretty good guidelines I'm willing to share if somebody's interested. They can always shoot me an email and I'll send them these guidelines, and we can work through that as well.
Could you talk a little bit more about that? I know that I'm used to Instagram and Twitter, and you can always follow my Twitter, Facebook, but you mentioned LinkedIn, and what really is even LinkedIn?
So LinkedIn is essentially a professional networking tool. Kind of like Facebook, but it really only includes professional opportunities. So you don't necessarily put your family information, you put your career information, jobs you've had, education you've had, things like that. And you can actually look for internships and jobs on LinkedIn. You can set criteria up for the types of positions you're interested in, and you'll be notified of those. You can search for them. It's a great networking tool. One of the things I find with LinkedIn is when I have let's say I'm looking for a job and I have an interview coming up. So when I interviewed at the University of Pikeville, one of the things I did was went on and searched LinkedIn, and I did a search of the University of Pikeville and some of my alma maters like Oregon State University, and lo and behold, the provost is an Oregon State University alum as well. And so you can sometimes find that connection. Now, I didn't know her prior to coming here, but what that is we now, even before I showed up here, I had a common point of interest with her. We had this common experience, this common link. And as students are looking for internships or jobs on LinkedIn, they can look for that too. So if they have an interview with an organization, or if they have an interest in an organization, they can go search LinkedIn by that organization name and the University of Pikeville, and there might be some contacts come up, and then they can get some personal connections with, maybe a UPIKE alum who works at that organization, can give them some inside information or some insight into what a position might be like.
Okay, that's really helpful. I know you were going through a list. Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
So other things you can do during this time, and it sort of relates to LinkedIn, is make sure you have a professional online profile. So Google yourself, see what comes up. It's a good time to clean up, Facebook things, pictures that maybe you wouldn't want a potential employer to see, posts, things like that.
So you're telling me that if I were to interview at the University of Pikeville, or even if I were to interview at some, job that may not be as prestigious as a university, that they might look at my Facebook, or they might look at my social media accounts?
Yeah, they will absolutely do it. It would actually not be real good of them not to do it, because it's too easy just to type somebody's name into Google and search. And what you want to come up when they search it is like your LinkedIn page that has all your professional experiences and things like that, not some party you were at, last Saturday that might negatively impact, your application. So they will search it, and so a good start for you is to search it as well. Search your name, see what comes up, clean up some of those things. I did a lot of crazy things when I was in college. They're not on Facebook, right? They're on a photo album at home. Nobody can find it, but it's a good time to clean some of that up. At the same time, it's important for you to have some profiles, because if an employer goes and searches, let's say they search for your LinkedIn profile and they don't find one, or your Facebook profile, they might wonder, well, what's this person hiding that they don't have this public persona? So just shutting it off or getting rid of it entirely is probably not necessarily the best option either.
Sounds like a delicate balance.
Yeah. My youngest, actually it's kind of interesting, my youngest son is 19, he'll be 20 soon, but when he was 15, he had an interview once for, it was just a lifeguarding position. And he went into it and they interviewed, and it was kind of the type of position where they really needed people, so it was probably a done deal. They were going to hire him as long as he didn't screw up, essentially, right? But one of their questions to him, because I took him to the interview, he couldn't drive yet, I dropped him off and waited for him, but he came out, he said, yeah, they asked me if they looked at my Facebook, what would they find? And interestingly, he didn't have a Facebook, and he said you wouldn't find anything. And they hired him anyway, but he does have one now. He's not really active on it, as I don't think, a lot of college students aren't that active on Facebook either. They're more into Snapchat or Twitter or, other applications. But it can be important to have some of those as well, but you want to make sure that what's on them is not something that's embarrassing.
That's helpful to know. Anything else that you would have advice there?
You can also sometimes build new skills, especially if you're someone that is an easy learner. I mean, there are all kinds of webinars and things online that you can watch. So instead of watching, YouTube videos of cats, maybe you can watch, some more educational things. Maybe you can teach yourself Excel or, something along that lines. It can be a time that can help you stand apart from someone. If you have some time to develop some skills, try to identify the skills that might be most relevant to the types of employers you're interested in, and see if there's some reading or observing of webinars or videos, things like that you can learn some things.
Well, I think that's a real great challenge. But I wonder today, when you see the job market, as you look at the job market, do you see any trends or skills that I really should be honing in on? And and sometimes, maybe even with that question, I would ask about mistakes you've seen to kind of give us a window. So any trends you're seeing, skills we should be developing, or mistakes that you see people make?
Yeah, I do think, I mentioned Excel already. I think Excel's a really good skill to develop. And, students in accounting typically know Excel fairly well, but other students don't always know it well. But it can be really helpful. I am not an expert in Excel. I would say I'm sort of a basic user, but it's a really good tool for me to know, and I wish it was something I knew better, because I think I could utilize it more to its capacity. I think there's always, technology skills in general are things that can always be useful to candidates. And I've told students for a few years now, when you get your first job after graduation, after college, often, depending on your field, your first day on the job, you will be the expert in technology when you walk in. because students today have grown up with that since they've been single digits, right? They've had it forever, so they know that. And so technology skills are always helpful, I think. But other skills, it depends a little bit on your career field, for sure. Soft skills are really critical, and by soft skills, we mean things not like Excel. That would be a hard skill that they could actually test you on and give you some type of, competency score, probably. Soft skills tend to be things like communication, leadership, teamwork. Those are skills that often employers look for that are a little bit harder to verify. Those are things that I think they try to bring out in an interview to judge you, because they can't measure whether you're a good leader or not until they've actually experienced it. So thinking about developing soft skills is really useful as well. Identify some of those skills. And we have a lot of athletes here, so I'm guessing a lot of athletes have pretty good skills in terms of teamwork and leadership and those types of things, for sure. The other thing you want to do is, even though you have the skill, you have to be able to sell a potential employer that you have that skill. So interviewing is really critical too. If you may have the best skills going into a job search, a job that you're interviewing for, you may be the top candidate, but if you don't sell yourself in that interview, candidate 2, 3, or 4 may be the one of choice.
Yeah, could you walk us through a little bit more about that? Because I meet people who are so confident. They walk into a room and, man, I want to make them my president, I want to hire them, but I don't know their skill, but they just exude confidence. And maybe I'm not that person.
Yeah.
Maybe I just kind of carry my head down, I don't feel like I have many skills, I really don't know what I'm doing with my life. Could you give me some interview pointers?
Yeah, so so the more introverted person needs to prepare more ahead of time. And, I think we've often heard people say, if you think about interviewing, it's not always the person who's the most qualified that gets the job, it's the person that interviews the best. And that's really pretty discouraging for someone who might be a little quieter, or, a little more introspective than, the outgoing person that we all, I think, wish we were in many cases. And so more introverted people need to do that preparation ahead of time. And that goes, not just for interviews, but in any setting. If you're in a meeting and it's often the more extroverted people who kind of dominate it, and the introverted people are more of the thinking types there, observing, listening. If you want to get those introverted people more engaged in the meeting, what you have to do is give them the agenda ahead of time so they can do that thinking and processing before they're in the meeting, and then they can be better engaged in the meeting. And I think the same is true in an interview. You have to be prepared. And if an introvert's able to be prepared, they'll be able to sell themselves. One of the things I like to do is I have a couple exercises I do, and it actually relates to the soft skills I mentioned, but I like to have students think about maybe their top 3 skills, what they think their greatest strengths are. And then what I like to have them do is think about stories of things they've experienced in their life. Could have been a part-time job, could have been a class project, could have been a personal experience, volunteer, service trip, whatever, right? Could have been any of those things. An experience they have that demonstrates how it is they have developed and used those skills. And what you want to do is you want to have interesting stories, because typically the person with the most interesting stories in an interview is the one who has the best interview and the one who gets the job, right? All of our life stories aren't interesting. Some of them are pretty mundane, but we probably all have a couple pretty good life stories that we can share. And those are the ones you want to start with. And if you prepare and think about them ahead of time, you can use those stories to demonstrate those skills in a behavioral way that'll make you a better interview and a better candidate for the job.
So really, I have to be memorable, professional, and do my homework. I mean,
Yep.
I have to get on the website and know about the company, and you know, so often I've seen people who go into interviews and at the end there's an awkward moment because the employer says, "Do you have any questions for us?"
Mm-hmm.
And people just look down and go, "Well, no." Could you tell us a little bit about like what would be a good question to ask
Mhm.
back to the employer?
So I think there are some questions that you can always ask. There are some questions that come from research. So definitely if you research the employer, that's going to help you get some more specific questions. But sometimes those questions come out as part of the interview anyway, and so you don't really need to ask it at the end. You might have already covered that. But I think there are some questions that are always helpful to ask. So when I'm in an interview, some of the things I like to ask are, you know, this is my favorite one recently that I've asked. So it's, if I am the candidate who is hired 6 months from now, or a year from now, whatever time period you want, but 6 months from now, what will I have accomplished for you to look back and say, boy, that was a good choice? Because then I know if I am hired, these are my targets during that first 6 months. Okay, so that's one I like to ask. Another one I like to ask, and it's almost always useful, is, you know, what is the person who was in this position before doing now, right? If they've been promoted, or maybe they went to another organization to a higher level position, as a candidate, that's a pretty good sign for you. Because you can assume when you leave that position, hopefully you're going to be doing bigger and better things too, right? If they've left and went to a position that's maybe parallel, then you might wonder, well, why is that employer better than this one if they left for the same exact position, right? And then a third question I always like to ask is, what is your timeline for making a decision? Because when you're applying for positions, you're probably applying for multiple positions at a time. And what will happen every time is the place you are least interested in will make you an offer first. And then you have to make a choice, right? But if the place I'm least interested in makes me an offer today, but I know the place I'm most interested in is going to make a decision next week, then I can put off making a decision to that organization for a week. Right? But if I know the place I'm most interested in isn't even going to do anything for 3 months, then I have to make a decision without having all the information. But at least I have the knowledge to know that, yeah, I got to make this decision. I'm not going to have all the information. I'm going to have to make the decision based on the information I do have.
That would be a tough moment to have to make those, wrestle that. So as students are, you know, working on their resumes and soft skills, learning something else, what about the students who just say, you know what, I have no idea. I'm doing English and math and chemistry right now, but honestly, I just have no idea what I need to do with my life. How in the world could you help them?
Yeah, so those are students who really need to start by doing some kind of assessments. So interest assessments, skills, values, those types of things. Because for them to make the next step in the process, they have to have a good self-knowledge of what they want to do. And so that's one of the things we're doing with this Focus 2 program that is going to be available soon. Another good assessment is on ONET, which is the federal government's assessment. They have an interest assessment that's pretty good. I actually just retook it yesterday to familiarize myself, but it'll ask you questions like, usually on a Likert scale, 1 to 5, would you like to build cabinets? Would you like to do this? And there's probably 100 of them. And based on the responder's profile, it will give you some career options that you might consider. That's usually a good starting point because it can help you narrow down, because there's a million things you can do for a career. But if you try to research a million things, you'll procrastinate on it because you can't possibly do that. But if you can do some assessments and get a little bit of focus on what it is that might be good fits, you can do some research on some of those things. Right? And a lot of the tools like ONET and like Focus 2, which we're going to be getting, will provide you a lot of career information too. So it won't just say, yes, you should go be a career counselor, but it'll give you information on what being a career counselor is like, and what the educational preparation is that's required and what a typical day is like and those types of things.
Well, you've given us a ton of information. Now, let's just say I'm a community member and I'm watching this. Would this office have anything for any community members that they could engage in or ask questions of?
I will tell you, so if they're more than welcome to contact me, that's not a problem for me, because to me, community members are potential students, basically. Or they could be alums, in which case we should be providing them some service anyway. So they are more than welcome to reach out to me. The Focus online assessment that I mentioned is going to be available on our website. I'll actually put the password right out there because that's pretty much how it's done. And it's not typically overwhelmed with community members who aren't students, but I think it's a good tool in terms of someone who's looking for some career direction and the types of things they might be interested in doing. I'm really working now to start building our website as well. So I have a lot of publications on resume writing, interview skills, job search strategies, government and public service employment, those types of things. I have the publications pretty much updated and completed in a Word format. Ultimately, those will be on our website, probably in PDF format, so someone could print them out if they chose, or they could just look at them electronically if they don't want to waste paper or that type of thing. So we'll have a lot of resources on our website eventually. We've been a little bit slowed down, not in terms of completing them, but in getting them on the website, because we're a little bit dependent on others to do that. And I think things move a little slower in general when you're working remotely. You try to stay focused and work hard, but there's a reason people work close to each other.
Yeah, today you've given us a lot to think about, and I know for me, if I were in college again, I might be like that little boy who just takes all the money out of my pockets and says, "Sir, what do I have?" Because I don't know what I have.
Yeah.
So this office is a great place. You could help me even shape the questions, or if I were like my old roommate Jeremy, who knew since the 3rd grade what he wanted to do with his life, you could help me too, kind of even sharpen that and maybe find places that would be best for me to thrive. So I'm excited that you're here. I think this office is great. Would you remind us one more time what office you work with?
So I am with the Career and Professional Development Office. We are in the administration building on campus. I can be reached, email's probably the quickest way, which is darwinkysor@upike.edu.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, and share this, reach out to our office and use this time of pause or slow down now that you're kind of figuring out your online learning to enhance yourself and really be the best marketable candidate when companies start hiring again. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.